Welcome to Now We're Getting Somewhere. I'm Katie, and I'm a certified life coach, but I've also been a management consultant at McKinsey and a product manager at a tech startup. In other words, I know what it feels like to have a life that looks pretty good on paper, but doesn't feel as good as I want it to. I help my professional clients develop lives that are more meaningful, happy, and also more successful. And I want to share the same practical insights with you. Let's go. Hey everybody. Today I am sharing with you an interview I did recently with my former client, Julie. Julie came to our coaching work together with a hodgepodge of things she wanted to work on, many of which I think probably many of you struggle with. She wanted to leave her job, but she couldn't quite bring herself to do it. She had some fear and hesitation about a few other big decisions in her life. In many other ways, she was settling for things being pretty good, but perhaps not quite what she most dreamed of. Our coaching work together became many things, but one of them was a really deep dive into how to get more skillful at decision-making itself. In our conversation, Julie and I talk about the list of super useful thoughts she cultivated and she really took on about decision-making, some of which you should absolutely steal. She also talks about a 4-part decision-making process that she developed during our work together and which she now uses to help people she loves, like her roommate, also make big decisions. You should steal this one too. She also talks about her ability to tell the difference between feelings or thoughts that are just swirl and maybe should be ignored versus thoughts or feelings which are navigational and important to figure out what path she wants to go in. And we talk about much more, including what it feels like to get coached. Frankly, I found myself grinning from ear to ear throughout this interview. Julie herself is such a warm and passionate and insightful and creative person. I'm sure that you are going to love it too. So without further ado, here is my interview with Julie. So thank you so much for being here today, Julie. I'm so glad to have you on the podcast. I wanted to just start out by inviting you to share a little bit about who you are to everyone listening so they have a better sense of you, whatever feels like important information about who you are.
Sure. So I am 29 and I live in Los Angeles and have for the past few years. Before that, I spent my whole life in Georgia, and I grew up in a home with a great family and parents that are still really happily married and a brother I've always been really close to. But I grew up in a Christian home, and that was something that has really deeply shaped who I am in every facet of my life. It brought so many good things into my life, I was always in small groups and had mentors and was going on retreats that were around growth and reflecting, and got to go on service-oriented trips and everything. But when my beliefs changed, I feel like I entered a new era of my 20s where I've just been sort of separating from that identity and figuring out what parts still serve me and seeing how it really influences the way I think about things, especially as it codes things as moral or not moral, and adds feelings of shame and different things where they don't need to be. And the other thing about me is that I've always struggled with the idea that your job is the main piece of your life. I have so many different activities that I invest really deeply in and kind of treat as my work. I'm a really avid pickleball player and I love cooking, and I treat my relationships so seriously. I visit my friends all the time and just haven't ever had work as the main centerpiece of my life. So, and other than that, I started working with you last year and we got to work together for the whole year, and just wrapped up coaching a couple of months ago.
So I always say my goal for these interviews is to both give you a chance to talk about some of the amazing and interesting insights you had in ways that I could never describe fully. And then also to talk people through what it felt like to be a person who is coached by me. So let's start from the beginning. When you reached out, you shared a bit about sort of what was going through your mind and sort of the life transitions you were in. But what made you think that coaching might be interesting to you? What kinds of topics were you hoping to get coached on?
I was really feeling stuck in the current job that I had, and I started growing my own interest in being a life coach. And so I took the Foundations of Course coaching course from the program that you actually graduated from, And I was so blown away and realized that I probably wanted to be coached before I coached anyone. But I also learned so much within that 1 week that I felt very bought into the value that I would get from being coached. Just like all the different methods I learned about listening and how to understand somebody was just like really eye opening about how it was going to feel different than counseling.
Yeah.
So that was piece one, is that I was interested in it potentially as my own career path.
Mhm.
But in my life, I felt super stuck, like I said, in my job. And I just felt like I had so many ideas about what I wanted to be doing in my life and how I wanted to be spending my time. And I was always like researching these things. Like I would have a million tabs open on my computer of like pottery memberships and trips I wanted to take and ideas for how I would host events at my house or the people that I wanted to reach out to that week. And I was just feeling so sticky and kind of trapped because a lot of those things weren't really coming together for me and I didn't know why.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, I need some another sounding board to talk to. And clearly I just felt like I couldn't get out of it by myself
Yeah.
and um, thought I could use some accountability and someone to like analyze maybe why I felt so stuck.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great description. I think a lot of people can probably relate to that feeling of being like, there's a lot of things that I want to get to that I'm not quite getting to. And also I'm frustrated with my job and like I'm not sure what that means or what the path out is. Exactly. Yeah.
Totally.
What was your expectation about what coaching was going to be like?
Well, I had some idea from taking that intro course
Yeah,
just
yeah.
about maybe what you might be looking for and like how it was going to be very personalized to what my needs were. And yeah, I realized that I was going to, need to share everything and just really invest in taking action. I think the biggest hurdle for me was the investment financially. And so when I did the initial like homework for you, which was like filling out a document that was an introduction to myself and having the initial consult with you, like both of those things, that was like a good barrier to entry to me to like have to really like thoroughly explain where I was at and what I wanted to get out of coaching and what outcomes I wanted to reach and just answer a lot of questions about myself. The idea of like having that upfront homework actually made me feel very bought in because I realized like, oh, I'm going to like have to follow up with these sessions and put
Yeah.
a lot into this to get a lot out of it. And that made it feel like a worthy investment.
Yeah, you liked that you were like putting a bunch of energy into this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you are somebody who I will say, and I always say, like, people can invest energetically to the degree that feels right to them. Because some people like don't like doing a lot of homework, and that's fine too. But you are somebody who like really went deep, I would say, into all the homeworks. And I think did get a lot out of it as a result, was my sense.
Yes, I would always look forward to the end of our session. Like, what is Katie going to make me do? Or not make me do, but like what ideas would you have for, some small actions that I could take? Because since I was feeling so stuck in my own like patterns in my own ways, like having this like outside source of original, things that I could pay attention to or work on was so exciting every week.
I love it. Yeah, great. So that's sort of where you started, feeling maybe a little stuck in the job, feeling like there's all these things you wanted to do that you weren't quite getting to. Once we started working together, like what were some of the things that felt interesting, or like what were some of the insights that you had that felt like new perspectives or new ways of being in the world?
So when we started working together, the very first like challenge I had in front of us was should I leave my job or not? And I had been working at a consulting firm for about 5 years, and I thought I had sort of done every iteration of that job to try to get it to something that would feel better to me, and I just felt really at the end of the rope, and but I just could not pull the trigger, and so that was where we started, and I think it created the foundation for this, like for everything that we went over in coaching, because I think that you addressed that I was sort of thinking about leaving my job as this big decision that I had to make. And I was very much approaching it from my head, like, should I leave my job or not? And you oriented me towards like thinking about what I deeply wanted and desired. And rather than like starting with the decision or like that big scary question, should I leave my
Mm.
job? We started more with like, what does my dream job look like? And like, what would my ideal way to spend my days or my working days look like? And we like got so deeply in touch with what I was really needing and what needs were not getting met. And then we did some work to maybe uh, not quite leave my job, but like see if there was anything to get it to a yes. And I think pretty quickly, like I realized I had tried so many of those things and it just was a no.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't so much that I was like trapped in indecision. I really knew exactly what I wanted to do. I was trapped in not taking action, like just not leaving the job.
Yeah.
And that's where I feel like we totally opened up what the rest of our coaching was going to be working on, which was like I had so many negative thought patterns that were blocking me from taking the actions that I wanted to take all over my life. And we got deep into those. Like we kind of took that in two directions. One of them was I had negative feelings, and then the other was that I had these negative thoughts. And the negative feelings I had, um, you called them like swirl and static. And I thought that they were navigational feelings. Like I thought, like, oh, surely if I'm so anxious about this, or I'm so afraid of being unemployed, or I'm so sure that this is the wrong time to leave a tech job because of the job market right now. Like that those feelings of fear and anxiety were all telling me that yeah maybe I should continue to like delay the decision. And I feel like the first lesson, just like the first voice note that you sent me, was about this. It was like sometimes the swirl is not navigational. It's just like rational, actually, to like be anxious about such a big change in your life,
Yeah.
or it is reasonable to think that is that the job market would make this, not the best time to leave a job. But those things don't have to mean that I shouldn't follow this deep desire that I was having. And we talked about methods for kind of working through that swirl, whether that was like quieting the swirl through, moments of rest or exercise, or whether that was really listening to the swirl and trying to figure out where those voices were coming from. But ultimately, like seeing my anxieties and my swirl as likely not navigational was such a huge roadblock to remove in taking action.
Ugh, I love that. I just want to name, Julie, that you synthesized what took a while, right? To even like number one, be like, okay, what's the difference between what's actually there for you? What are these voices? And then what do we actually, yeah, is this really something we want to take seriously, or is this just swirl? And then like calibrating your compass so that you could tell the difference between true navigational things, and then sorting through all those feelings to figure out like which ones are true and which ones are just sort of jumpy fear or whatever. Um, yeah, there's like so many steps in there that like happen very subtly, but we're all stopping you from actually feeling comfortable leaving your job for months, right?
So long. I thought that when we started working together, I would like magically it would like work, coaching would work or something in some way, and I would like quit my job within a week. But there was so much to understand about my inaction that I'm really glad that we took the time to go through. And I don't think I left my job for like 3 more months after we started working together,
Yeah.
because I kept being like, Katie, this week I'm going to do it. And then each week when I wouldn't, we would have so much to talk about because there would be like another voice inside of me that you would get to learn about. And I would get to
Yeah.
learn about because I wasn't even listening to them before about
Yeah.
why I just like couldn't pull the trigger that week.
Yeah. I love that. And there's often a lot more there, I think, that we give credit for. Like we can just be like, oh, I know I need to leave, but I can't. I'm just such a, I don't know. Why can't I get my act together? But really there's like a lot more to learn there and a lot more lessons about even skillfulness there. Yeah. Well, and do you want to talk about the negative thought side of things? You alluded to that too.
Yes, totally. So the negative thought patterns was something that I feel like I had a bit of a blind spot about. I thought that I had like great self-talk and that I had a really like realistic self-awareness. And in having to dig so deep in these uh, moments where I wasn't taking action every week, I feel like so much was revealed to me. And it kind of turned out that with each of those desires that we realized together that I had, and like those wants and those needs and those lists that we made, that were like these moments of very easy clarity for me. Like I could just spit out so many of these things that I really wanted quite easily. Like in your words, like my compass was really working. I think through the act of sort of sitting more in my body and hearing uh, where these voices were coming up and sort of convincing me not to take action, hearing where those voices were coming from, led us to identify a lot of beliefs I had, such as like I couldn't. I believed that I couldn't make decisions without outside counsel, and that I really needed
Yeah.
to like seek the wisdom of others, and especially my parents. I've always trusted them so much, and I think I really ended up having like a handicap in my decision making because I've always really bounced my decisions off them or gauged the validity of my decisions from how they reacted. And another huge component, I think, is that perhaps because of my upbringing, like I think the idea of like going after what you want and what your desires are was very coded in some like moral language. I feel like as a Christian, the way that I grew up, like what we want is something it's like probably like hedonistic or something that is selfish or
Mhm.
um yeah, you're really not supposed to like go after what you want. Like you're supposed to be like filtering um these things. And so I think I probably like didn't realize that that was yeah, I like didn't really trust some of my desires. And I kind of easily filtered them through a negative lens. And so we really worked on realizing that like I could be confident in what my needs and desires were, and that they were more like values a lot of times. It wasn't just like selfish wants. Um, and one of the main ways that we had to do that was through this like executive summaries homework that you gave me that one time. So you asked me to write down in just 4 or 5 bullet points some truths that I wanted to replace my negative thoughts with. And I wrote down like, um, I am able to fix things that go wrong, and I will make a decision with the information I have at the time, and I can then assess if I've um, sort of made that decision properly after the fact. Another one was most decisions I make will be partially or totally reversible.
Mm.
Another one was uh, a worst case scenario of some of these decisions I make will be a short or medium stressful situation. It's rarely going to be an actual crisis. And so these like bullet point truths that we kind of made became these north stars that I realized I had to repeatedly go back to like every single day because
Mm.
those voices were so strong telling me otherwise, and I needed to very actively and intentionally replace them with more true things that I believed.
I love it. I want to unpack this for the people listening because this executive summary practice, I literally just made up while we were talking, but it's so good. And I now give it to other friends. And you are somebody who I don't even know if it's come across yet, but you are somebody with such a rich inner life, right? And you have like so many thoughts and feelings, and like you can just go in all the directions, which is such an incredible strength of yours. But then the like Achilles heel of that is you can kind of get lost in all the thoughts, and it can become hard to like hold on to like what you actually want to believe, or like where the truth is in there. Totally. Is that how it feels to you sometimes, Julie?
Most definitely. I'll just journal and make lists and do some kind of reflective walk or something and feel like I've come up with something totally new, or I found some new untrue thing to believe that I need to undo. over and over.
Yeah, so it's easy to get lost in the swirl. And I don't think you're the only one. So we came up with this practice where you would make executive summary from just like from my consultant days. I was like, okay, well, make a slide that has 3 to 5 bullet points on it, that which is like the points you want to focus on. And so we were doing a lot of work around decision making and your beliefs around decision making. And you had a lot of like you said, like maybe beliefs that weren't serving you around like, I'm going to make some terrible decision and I won't be able to fix it, or like I can't trust my own decision making, or, yeah, it's going to be permanent. And so these thoughts that you had, I just think, I mean, this could be a whole podcast episode, but those thoughts were so freaking good that I hope everyone steals them, right? Like I'm able to fix things that go wrong. I will make a decision with the information that I have at the time. That's all that I can do. I can't possibly know every piece of information in the future. That's not possible. You know, most decisions I make will be partially or totally reversible. The biggest downside will be short to medium term pain. Like those are thoughts that like when you could actually synthesize and look at them every day as you did, that can really move the needle in terms of making, like, somebody who believes things like that is capable of making decisions, which is what the kind of person that you became, right? Yeah,
Yes, absolutely.
yeah, I love those thoughts so much.
I pulled up my PowerPoint deck. I found another great one, which was
Yeah, share it. Share it for the
my
people.
decisions will not always turn out the way that I intended, but this isn't always due to faulty assessments.
Oh, I love that one, right? Because what is believing that? Read that one again and then tell me so the people can hear, what does believing that make it possible for you to do?
hmm So it's my decisions will not always turn out the way I intended. This isn't always due to faulty assessments. This one feels like a fear quieter, like the voice in me that's just like still ready even after being stamped out forever. That's like, okay, maybe I'll make the decision, but then that voice is ready to be like, I told you so, and like you were wrong. You should have waited or you should have gathered more information. Yeah, I think this truth is so important because there are so many variables all the time. We can't possibly
Yeah.
have control over everything. And if you're so ready to, regret a decision or to let a decision that didn't turn out the way you intended mean something about your identity or your ability to make good decisions, you're just really stuck in the loop that I was in. Like um, I wasn't going to get out of my negative thinking if I was ready to have negative thoughts to throw at myself after making a decision.
Yeah, I love that. If having a decision that goes not the way you intended, which a certain percent of decisions always will, because there's always going to be factors we couldn't have foreseen. That's just what it is to have incomplete human information. But if that happening makes you think that your capacity to make decisions is faulty, then you're just like you said, you can never make a decision. And then you're totally stymied in your life. So, but if you have the belief, like, look, that's going to happen some percentage of the time, that's just what it is to make a decision. That doesn't mean I did anything wrong. Then you like have some empowerment. Yeah.
That really leads me to, I think, what the other huge lesson was in coaching with you, because at first I did have these really big decisions that I wanted to make. I was wanting to leave my job. I ended up wanting to leave a relationship, and I really wanted to go from living alone to having roommates again. And all three of those felt like they were going to cause really big shifts in my life. And so I ended up, I think, making all three of those decisions by May, which was like 3 months in with you. And then I was just in the aftermath of these big decisions, and they happened to all turn out really beautifully and really meet some of my needs and helped me feel really attuned with some of those values. But after that, I had, it's not like everything gets solved once you like make these big decisions or, even make shifts in your life, because it's really about living in attunement with your desires and your values, in as micro ways as possible. Like we have a million actions that we get to take every day. And um, so, yeah, I really started to see how I could get other things in my life that maybe felt a little bit off, or I kind of had these no feelings in my body, how I could get them to more of a yes. And I feel like we spent the rest of my coaching time focusing on, continuing to combat some of those negative thought patterns around my own desires, um, so that I could get more confidence in asking for things and, yeah, making requests of others or of, my freelance job or my roommates or even myself, how I could make requests that would get things to be more of a yes. And that was my next huge breakthrough because those are micro decisions that
Yeah.
end up making you feel more in tune and less off in your life, that don't require you to leave your whole job or something.
Yeah. Well, and do you want to talk about like, because I think sometimes when there's like the big decisions, it's like we know that they're off. We know that they're a no. But like what felt like was standing in the way of you kind of making some of those smaller decisions in your
Hmm.
life?
I think that I have very active, like self justification voice that would really speak up and provide a lot of good sounding reasons for why I should do something. And so one of I think my weekly homework things was for these things in my life that felt sort of off. Like for example, I was playing a ton of pickleball and I loved it. And I've always loved racket sports and it should just be very fun. It was a hobby that I was able to take pretty seriously because I have just a lot of experience. But I would just come home every week or every day and just feel a bit unsatisfied. And I didn't think about that as an area of my life that I should take seriously and like think about what I really wanted until you you let me. I think I just thought it was really silly. Like everybody is really obsessed with pickleball right now, and so I just didn't give myself permission to really like look at that, um, and what it was bringing into my life. And we just made some really small actions that I could take together. So sometimes I would just like, show up to the courts and not really get good games in, or I wouldn't play a lot. And so, we articulated things like I can schedule matches with people I want to play, or I can schedule matches at courts that I like to play on. And like, it's okay that I want to try to get better at this. Like, if I want to take, showing up at the courts seriously and, really try to play my best, like, I don't have to let the recreational aspect of it make me feel stupid for feeling like that.
Well, and I just want to clarify here, like I should have said this about your job too, but like you are like an excellent athlete who's like really good at pickleball. And we're like getting sort of too good a little bit for all the people that you were playing recreationally with, right? And then it was feeling kind of like, oh, am I too big for my britches? Like, am I being too like, full of myself to think that this versus like, what if this is time for you to step into the next level of your pickleball playing? Because like that's good for the world, for like, the people who are better would love to play with you. They just haven't found you yet. So like, yeah, I think there's also a big piece around just like, how can you be even bigger in the world? Like, and how that can that be a positive thing for everyone?
I feel like my pickleball playing was an area that really helped me see how my brain was constantly telling me I needed to be like smaller, and that I wouldn't like accept the thought that maybe I was like good enough to play with other people, or this really trickles into like I'm not, maybe good enough at my job to have a better one, or this
And
whole
I'll
like
just interrupt here. Yeah, I'm just interrupt here to say what you so graciously have not yet said, which is that like you are have been such a shining star at every job you have. And that's in some ways contributed to the problem, right? Like everybody loves you and like wants to promote you and keeps giving you more opportunities. But then, and so it's in some ways hard to leave because like people keep giving you all this positive feedback. And then also like if you're not totally seeing that or you're feeling like that's ungrateful of you or whatever, then it can be hard to move on to the next thing.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever been able to like deeply internalize, you know, pieces of evidence as reasons to be confident. I can always like combated those.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that there's ways that the work that we did has helped me, not filter the evidence through these negative patterns. But I also think we really focused on, um, especially at the end, just realizing that there's like intrinsic uh, value and confidence to be driven from things that I want and need. And that sometimes just trusting that those things, um, are there for a reason, even if I can't like perfectly explain them yet. Like I want to play pickleball more seriously. Like just letting that be something that inspires confidence and drives me forward, and then make some decisions off of that that I can assess and maybe get some evidence off of. Like I don't have to always have this like evidence-based feedback loop that I can trust before every decision I make
Mm.
happens.
Yeah, like you can trust that there's something like innately positive about even desiring something, even desiring to take pickleball more seriously, or even desiring to move on to a different job opportunity or anything.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm, I love that. Yeah. I feel like there were so many things we talked about. I was thinking about all the work we did on like finances too, and like financial beliefs, and yeah. Is there anything that you else you want to share about what the journey was like, or insights you had that you think would be helpful for someone?
Mm, I think I'm such a process person. And so I feel like you really accurately identified that. And we kind of came up with my quote unquote like decision making process.
Yes.
Um,
Okay, good. Talk
and
about that.
so,
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like something that so many of our sessions I think ended up being spent on the same things. Like I would come back to you and be like, oh yeah, I still didn't take that action, or I'm still thinking this thing, or I would have like a new version of that thing. And
Super normal, by the way. Our things are always
yes,
our things, but I hear you. Yep.
yes, just really deeply ingrained things. And I just had so much, I needed to spend so much time getting into my body, which I hadn't been doing, and like hearing out all these voices that I don't think I'd been listening to. And so I think a lot of weeks I would sort of show up to our sessions feeling like, oh no, I didn't, like make progress or something. And you very astutely kind of helped, um, like just having to meet with you each week created this, like accountability of like I was going to have to talk about it every week, but you very astutely like identified how necessary it was for me to keep something fresh. And really like each week we would rewrite, my reasons for doing something and talk about whether I liked those reasons, or we would rewrite, what some of my thought patterns were. And that ultimately led to this kind of defined process that I've been able to apply to my like decisions outside of coaching with you, and also is now a deeply kind of ingrained way that I think about making choices that I've been able to share with my friends. Um, so I thought I would kind of share with that
Yeah,
as
please. Okay, I just want to like underline what you said, and that like Julie literally has on a power in a document like her 5 point or however many points it is decision making process, and you literally like walked roommates and friends through this process to successfully make decisions for yourself that you developed for yourself out of that came out of our work together. Um, it's so cool. Okay, please share.
It's been
Yeah.
so helpful. Yes, just an anecdote about my roommate. She was deciding whether she wanted to go to India for the holidays, and there was all these different reasons why she should or shouldn't go, and they were very stressful. And the very first step of this process, of course, is like getting deeply in touch with what you want and kind of giving yourself permission to actually dream like as big as you can, and like think about what would make something like a 10 out of 10 experience, or something that really really deeply meet a need. And she went from having sort of a trip plan that was going to be bouncing around to a lot of different family members, and not feel very restful, into planning this like vacation to India where her boyfriend joined her, and they got time to themselves, and then they did a perfect balance of family things where he got to meet these new family members, and it turned out to be such a beautiful trip. And she came home just glowing about how she would have never like dreamed up how it could be like incredibly restful and epic. And it turned out to be that way. So that was very validating of this process too.
Oh man, Julie, I mean, this will be a recording so no one can see, but I'm just like smiling ear to ear. That's just like so beautiful. Yeah, I love it. Okay, okay. Share your decision-making process with the people because they need it.
Okay, the first step is doing whatever kind of works for you for getting in touch with your desires or your needs, or your values. So, that might mean like spending time quietly to yourself. For me, that often meant actually like talking with friends and just kind of like ideating out loud. I'm a really like external processor. So it was like, um, yeah, just being able to like effusively idea generate and kind of feel in my body. Like once I would kind of walk away from some of those conversations, like what felt like a deep yes, and like what would kind of bubble to the top. Um, so step one, do whatever works for you to like deeply get in touch with like what your biggest yes would be, like your 10 out of
Mm,
10. Um,
mm.
and if I would also, I'm just such a list maker, like I would have like all these different little smaller things that would be involved. Um, so just like dream, like let
Dream
yourself,
big. Yeah.
really dream big and detailed and just get psyched on, the confidence that you can have in your own dream and how good it feels to like really listen to what you really want.
I love it.
Um, Next, I would uh, get ready for like the fears and the negative thought patterns, which at this point we
Mm,
were kind of like able to name.
mhm.
So like the very first one was always around trusting in my own decision making. And so I would need to like spend some time basically spelling out like, okay, where is the indecision going to creep in? Like, where am I preemptively able to guess that I'm not going to take action on this? So a lot of times that would be something financial related, or it would
Mhm.
be, or it would be, those beliefs around like, no, that's just like too big of a dream. Like kind of how to like talk to myself about how I was able to and deserved to, dream big. Um, Other ones would be like logistics. Like because I like to do so many things, I would easily um, kind of like make it easy for myself to imagine that it couldn't be possible logistically. Like, well, you've got this going on and this going on, and so sort of take a beat to look at those things and put like a thinking cap on of like truth telling and like, okay, could I actually logistically make this happen? And what would it take? Like, what kind of time or money would it take to like truly plan this out and kind of do a little bit of that planning so that when those fears kicked in, that would tell me like, that's not possible. I would be ready with answers about how like actually it is.
Yeah. Yeah. We didn't even talk about that, but we did a lot of conversations about that too, right? The logistical side of things and what's going to actually happen in the nuts and bolts. Yeah. Love it.
Just to go down that rabbit trail a bit, like I would often have like this vague financial or logistical anxiety. And you and I did a lot of work to like actually make a financial plan or to,
Hmm.
review my last month's finances, see exactly how much I spent, and then, make a decision from this place of knowledge instead of a place of anxiety when it came to those fears popping up.
I'm so glad you said that because I think, well, first of all, you're like wowing me where you keep talking about like a yes in your body and a no in your body. But I feel like sometimes people hear that and they're like, oh, it's just going to be intuitive. But it was also very practical. Like we spent quite a bit of time like thinking about your actual nuts and bolts finances and what made sense for you and sort of quieting the financial fears with facts as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really did. And then so, preempting my negative patterns
Hmm.
and kind of writing a little bit about what I was going to do to combat that. But then
Yeah.
also just taking time to sit and listen. And you kind of gave me this like deep thought work exercise that was around just stream of consciousness, writing out what my thoughts were. And then once they're on paper, kind of going through a set of questions about each one of those. So asking each of those thoughts written down, like, what do I let this mean? Because I believe this thought, like what else do I let be true or what else am I believing? And kind of like even expanding that thought or realizing what outcome that thought was having on me. We replaced some of those thoughts with truer thoughts. So kind of like the executive summary exercise where it's like, okay, I might have this like long stream of consciousness, terrible self-talk sentence I just wrote out. How do we replace that with like a very simple bullet point of something that I want to believe instead of that thing?
Yeah.
Um, So that was step two. So step one was, okay, identifying my absolute dream in that situation. Step two is cataloging the fears or like the negative thought patterns and then seeing what else arises there. The next one was maybe if it was related to a decision I was going to need to make or a series of decisions, kind of writing down what my reasons were, or,
Mm.
even getting into this place or my reasons for the dream. So like if I'll just use the example of like pickleball, for example. Like there's this one moment where I had a last second decision to go to a tournament that was a couple of hours away. And my dream scenario was like to stay with a friend, so not have any housing costs, and to play multiple events so that it felt worth the drive, and to win and to, do some other things in the area so that it felt a little bit like a vacation. And yeah, some of those factors changed, and I couldn't really decide whether to make the decision anymore. But when we listed out my reasons for why I would still go, I actually came up with a bunch of great reasons that were like, oh, I can, see what a professional tournament is run like, and I can kind of see how I stack up against the competition. And we ended up sort of repeatedly doing this exercise within this process where I wrote out my reasons, and then we would really highlight the ones that I liked and the ones that sort of made me find the yes again.
Yep.
And then the last step was really focused on like next steps. So not just thinking about like, okay, so what's my decision, which is where I would always conclude after doing any kind of exercise before working with you. But it would be like, what is the very small next step or action that I should take? And it might be like sending a text to like that friend to see if I could stay there, or, for that pickleball tournament or whatever it was, kind of looking at those fears and those things that were making me, that were working against me from achieving like what this dream would be, and taking small actions to either gather more evidence for them or to um, give me the confidence that I needed to kind of lead up to that big decision, um, and kind of have like an ultimate, next move to make. But
Mm.
breaking it down from feeling like there was just this ultimate move to make was always like so daunting to me. And that's where all of my indecision, um, and feelings about how I couldn't make decisions would just totally stunt me. And
Yeah.
so by always, creating like what is the very smallest next thing that I can do, I would end up having this little to-do list of very approachable, practical things that were going to give me like good feedback loops and make me feel like, oh, I feel like I have the right decision or the right like feelings in my body to ultimately make this move or not.
I love it. I think this is a great 4-step framework. I think this is worth listening to the podcast today, period, for people. I mean, that's so beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you for helping me create it. I I look at it all the time, and yeah, it's really changed how I think about things.
This is so beautiful. Well, so as we're sort of closing out, thinking about our time together, I always like also ask, like, from your view in the client seat, like, what was coaching? In what ways was coaching what you expected? In what ways was it not what you expected? Like, what is your perspective now, having been through it?
Hmm. So yeah, up front, I was thinking like, wow, this is such a big investment. I'm going to be ready to like do the homework and make the changes in my life that I probably need to. And yeah, I just kind of thought that something about like the accountability, both from you and financially, was just going to make like making decisions easier. Like that's how desperate I was to like get out of my indecision, as I was like, maybe this will make
I'll just pay the
my
money and
job
there'll be
easier.
someone looking at me. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, maybe those two factors are going to make this easier. But I think, and this is something that we caught up on just like the other day, it's been 2 months since I've been coached by you, and there are so many, um, I don't know, small things that I still felt like I hadn't quite changed yet. And you gave me so much grace and patience, and, reminded me that that is what I need to offer to myself. And I think, I still have these beliefs around like, okay, they're so deeply ingrained that once you kind of like know what you want, operationalizing that desire as fast as possible is the goal. And
Mm.
I think what you said that like really struck me is you were like, any time that you're starting to think that it's, black and white, and that, there's just this clear cut decision in front of you, like you need to do this big thing or not do this big thing, like that should be sort of a red flag, because pretty much everything in our life requires iterative navigation. And sometimes, or most of the time, things are actually quite complex. And it takes as much time as you need to really listen to what's going on with you, and to like let each voice be heard, and to understand where it's coming from, and how it served you in the past and how it may or may not serve this situation. Like that can just take a long time. And I I think I've just really changed the way that I see what I thought my indecision was, when really it's just this like period of time where I need to like deeply discover and kind of like love myself and hear what my thoughts are, and then understand that it doesn't mean a decision is going to be made right away. It can be really small decisions, or it might mean just giving myself grace while I like sit in the complexity, or
Mhm.
the feelings I have about those feelings for a little bit.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I don't think I quite directly answered your question, but I just really thought that it was going to feel like, you know, even just talking about that process that we came up with, like, there's just like no easy button. There's no like getting around sort of taking the time that your body needs to really get at what it wants to do, and
Yeah.
and sort of give everything the space and time that it needs. And I think that I didn't expect to feel that I would have gained so much like self-love for myself through our practice. And
Mm.
I always just felt very like loved by you in a way, just like your voice in my life as someone who always like gave me the time and space to like keep thinking about something. And, not, you never ever made me feel any type of way for not having taken a certain action that I really wanted to take or something. And just hearing how your voice became very like embedded in my mind as another like truth speaker, and another way of approaching a situation, which was always very like patient and gentle. And I feel like I'm slowly trying to, make that the default for my own voice too.
Yeah. Hmm. I love that. Well, I take away from that sort of like you thought it would be like there's just like a button. Coaching is just like a button and then you make the decisions, but there's a lot more like complexity and humanness, but also like love and kindness to it. And I could, if I was someone listening to this, I think that would both be like a bummer because you hope it will just like get done real fast. But then it's also just like you did ultimately. I mean, you've got this four-step decision-making process. So like decisions get made and things get done. It just happens in this like very human, like right feeling way. I don't know. Is that how it felt to you?
Yes, exactly. And I think I just, because I felt so stuck, I just was like so excited about the goal of feeling unstuck. And I don't know if that is really like a feeling that ever like completely goes away, because there's just a constant cycle of, re-getting in touch with what you want. And as you make decisions, or as make choices, take little actions. I kind of like to replace the word decisions with just like taking little actions, but then
Yeah.
I feel like it takes the power away from the idea that, there was this big thing to assess, or that it's not something that's reversible, or something that another action, you know, in the right direction can sort of get you more in alignment with something. I just kind of lost my train of thought.
No, that's totally true. Yeah, I think you're saying like we're all in process, right? Like,
Yeah, it's process all the time. We're always in the middle of it. I think I thought of like, thank you for picking that up. I got really like, oh my gosh, there's these big decisions I need to make. And these are like these turning points in my life. Or like if I thought about my life as some kind of narrative, like these are going to be these like poignant, moments. And I want to like make those peaks seem a whole lot lower, and sort of get a lot more
mm,
used to like being in the middle of things, and not always be like looking towards some kind of big change that it's going to make myself feel like more right or more in line with my life.
yeah, I love that. Yeah, we're always making decisions. And I will also say, I hope it's okay to say, like, you are also, as we talk, you've entered like another kind of like decision-making moment, right? You made a lot of decisions and now you're sort of like finally having a bit of an empty slate to really examine like what you'd like to do next work-wise, making some other sort of decisions in your life. So you're really in that, figuring out
Yeah.
what's going to be next.
And I have to like, so right now I'm, yeah, not working intentionally, and I've carved out a couple months of time for myself to really be in like an exploration phase where I have like a complete open slate to try to think about if I want to make a career path change or if I can kind of try to find the right job in tech that feels right to me. And like every couple of days, I have that voice in my head that's like, you're being indecisive. Like, you need to make a choice, or you need to like get moving, or, some kind of like idea of productivity or a sense of progress about this phase I'm in. And
Yeah.
I'm having to remind myself every day, like, you're just like in the middle of things right now. Like, you are intentionally exploring, and you're, intentionally trying things on and trying ideas on. And you don't always have to like race to this like peak where you're going to feel like I made a decision and I'm like, uh, have this change in my life.
Yeah, totally. And we were talking about this earlier, but yeah, there's its own inherent challenges to the totally empty space phase to navigate always.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Well, as we finish up, anything else you want to say, either to people who've like never been coached before about what coaching is like, or any just like last insights about, I don't know, development that you learned about yourself that you feel like people that would be of service to people in some way before we close out?
Hmm. Maybe that if you're considering coaching and you're thinking about either the time commitment or the financial commitment, um, I I would say like I thought about that so much too, and especially as our sessions were going to be coming to an end after working together for about 9 months. Yeah, I just like started feeling that financial anxiety again, where like some voice kicked in that is like, okay, was this worth it? Or like, how much did I get out of this or something? And I have had no trouble quieting that voice. Like, I
Mhm.
have been processing what we've been working through, every day pretty much. It's like it comes up in
Yeah.
so many of my conversations. I feel so annoying. I'm always like, oh, and the work I did with my life coach. Because the concepts that we worked on in some of these like thought patterns we named, like I'm able to use a lot of those tools now just in more and more areas of my life, or
Yeah.
um, just like over and over. And the more I like read about or like read through my journals from our time together, I'm just like seeing them with all these new layers. And I'm just
Mhm.
continuing to get more and more value out of what we went over together. And yeah, I feel no doubt about how it's really influenced the way I'm going to live my life forever. So um, I don't say that lightly either. It feels like it was truly an education, not only in Julie, like the way that I think about things and like analyzing my past decisions. Like, I feel like I learned so much about myself, but it also felt a bit like um, an education in like life skills that we just don't always get when we're um, growing up. Just about like reframing decision making as um, you know something not scary and like a part of daily life, and um, how to think about our emotions and all those juicy things that we went into. I feel like I just learned so much about how they worked, and I didn't know how to think about my anxiety in a way that was productive. And I think I'm just going to continue to get to grow in that knowledge.
Mm. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that, Julie. I really appreciate that. And I think I'm glad you named the financial side of it because I know you had a lot of like fears and feelings and thoughts when we started working together, and I know a lot of other people do. So I appreciate it. Well, thank you so much, Julie, for doing this. I think this is going to be supportive to a lot of people. Thank you so
Thanks.
much.
You are so welcome. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. It's really nice to get to see you again.
Likewise. If you really want to change in a meaningful, lasting way, that's when you need a life coach. Every client I've worked with has had incredibly personalized reasons why they're in the tired or anxious or stuck or uninspired state they're in. Working with me can help you identify those roadblocks, which are usually blind spots that you genuinely cannot see, and implement a profoundly customized, doable plan for overcoming them. I have a very small, high-end, one-on-one coaching practice. If you'd like to be my next client, reach out at katiesiever.com. I'd love to meet you.